William
Hold
Shakespeare...
it right there.
What?
You can't get rid of
one.
Shakespeare just because he was a rich, white, cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied, neurotypical white man.
Who are
Professor
you?
Dumas. Now, any attack on Shakespeare is an act of violence
I'm
on
not
me.
attacking Shakespeare.
I saw the title. I know postmodernism when I claim it. You will not take him from me, so sorry not sorry.
Look, let me make my video. If it's out of line or censorship, you can call me out, okay?
Oh, don't think I won't,
Gosh,
pal.
it's getting theatrical here. Okay, from the top. William Shakespeare is obviously the most famous playwright ever. If you haven't heard of him, you probably are new to both media and the internet, in which case thanks for checking me out first. Listing the accomplishments and posthumous awards bestowed on him would be exhausting and pointless, so let's just say instead that across the English-speaking world and beyond, the Bard's influence is grand, his work staples in education, and his legacy is secure. That said, because he is so popular, Shakespeare is also the playwright whose works are subject to deconstruction and analysis. Seemingly endless amounts of media have been written, both in praise and disdain, for Shakespeare. Becoming a cultural icon means some people get defensive about him. Some individuals were outraged when a student at Yale proposed that Shakespeare should not be required reading, as his works don't reflect the entirety of the spectrum that is the English language. Individuals like right-wing commenter Jordan Peterson claimed that Yale was proving it was doomed to irrelevance for this, and author Kim R. Holmes called it an offense to the whole idea of a liberal education. So yeah, people get sensitive about him. And the idea that his plays have racist and sexist aspects has been addressed en masse. Roles like Othello were written for white men in blackface, and all of his women were written to be performed by men. However, these roles have, in recent times, been analyzed and criticized, deconstructed and evaluated. There are some black actors that will not play Othello because it was not written with their humanity in mind. Other black actors have taken up the chance to show the humanity inherent in Othello, and others still have focused on the elements of gender in the play, and wish to portray Othello as a soldier first. As time went on, more and more roles opened up to actors of sub-Saharan African descent, and of other origins, and female directors took the helm of plays like The Taming of the Shrew. We've come a long way since Ira Aldridge, William Henry Brown, and James Hewlett broke the Shakespeare color barrier, and consequently, the quality of plays and adaptations have gone up as well. Shylock is far more interesting as a struggling father than as an evil, Jewish stereotype money hoarder. Othello is more likable as the recipient of racism rather than random hatred, and Lady Macbeth is way more intimidating as an emotional anomaly than a single-minded manipulator. But there's one character that isn't as often reclaimed. Richard III is one of the most famous characters in Shakespeare's plays, with lines like, "Now is the winter of our discontent," and "My kingdom for a horse." Richard is often considered one of the best Shakespearean villains, really only contested with Iago and the two villains from Titus Andronicus. With an opening soliloquy, Richard sets himself apart by making the audience his accomplice, and drags them along through his crimes. His motives are power, his relationships are abusive, and his behavior is destruction. And though his wickedness can be entertaining, it isn't greatly explained. Well, at least in the play. Outside of the play, William Shakespeare was careful to portray the War of the Roses as charitably as possible to the Tudors. After all, he didn't want to anger the leader of the unfree world by insulting Henry VII. So even without any proof of Richard committing these crimes, the play frames him for the murders of Anne Neville, whose death he greatly mourned, Richard Neville, and Edward of Lancaster, who both died in battle with the Yorks, and while could possibly have been killed by Richard, would not have been murdered. The princes in the Tower, whose disappearance is admittedly a mystery, and his brother. Though the real Richard was far from responsible for most of these acts, and not half as schemingly evil as his character in the play, Shakespeare makes him an unsympathetic villain, one that even God will not pity, and one who all of his dead relatives despise. Internally, Richard cannot say he is evil because William Shakespeare wants to kiss up to the monarch, so we get just a hint of a motive before diving into charismatic evil. Quote, "But I that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty, to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time, into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable, that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why, I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to spy my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain, and hate the idle pleasures of these days. End quote. Richard isn't able-bodied. He's described later as having a bunched back, likely referring to kyphosis. He's described regularly with terms referring to animals, and is treated as though his disabilities make him lesser. Now, the real-life Richard had scoliosis, but that isn't as noticeable on a stage meters away, so the disabilities are exaggerated, not just to be seen, but to be acknowledged. Shakespeare's audience is supposed to see a man with disabilities as lesser than themselves. In the play, Richard's evil is synonymous with his disability, and his disability is increased alongside his evilness. His cruelty is both explained by his disabilities, and his enemies are shown to not dismiss him out of hand because of these, and are proven wrong when they do so. You thought he could be a good person? No. He has disabilities. You should have known better. Ignoring the fact that people with disabilities are more likely to be victims than abusers. Actually, you know what? Let's not ignore that. Individuals with disabilities and disorders are often portrayed as violent monsters, rampantly dangerous, and evil incarnate. Whether it's physical disability, with no chance for being loved cited as reason enough, or mental disability, media's favorite go-to for evil but we don't have a narratively sound explanation for it, villains are often given disabilities. Characters are either ableist and justified, as the characters are evil, or not ableist and proven wrong, often as victims of the person they thought was human. But in real life, it'd be the other way around. And this is in no small part due to media. Sure, humans have regularly set up structures that persecute individuals with differences, but those structures influence media, and thus create a vicious cycle. People without disabilities abuse those with disabilities, and media suggests that they deserve it, or that they can't feel it, or in the case of parents, that they are preventing future violence. I could spend an hour, easily, talking about how this type of writing is prevalent in superhero stories, but I'm here to talk about Richard III. Richard isn't just evil and happens to be disabled. His disability causes his evilness. The lesson to be drawn is that you can't trust individuals with disabilities, and thus Richard III is often portrayed by able-bodied, neurotypical actors dressed up to look different. There is no nuance, no sympathy, and no reason for either provided in the original text. Perhaps Shylock is a good man driven to vengeance by an unfair world, but not Richard. Richard is a villain, written and portrayed by people incapable of understanding his condition, unjustified in his motivations, illogical in his actions, and devastating in his implications. And it's no wonder the role isn't traditionally played by actors with disability. That is, until recently. Before he won 2 Emmys, in 2004, phenomenal actor Peter Dinklage portrayed Richard III at the Public Theater. Just the difference of having an actor with a disability play the role, alongside impeccable acting, of course, caused New York Times theater critic Ben Brantley to posit of Richard because he has to work harder than his peers to belong to a morally diseased society. He plays that society's rotten games better than anyone. Matt Fraser was born with phocomelia, and portrayed Richard in Northern Broadside's and Whole Truck Theater's production. His performance was met with great acclaim, and Guardian critic Alfred Hickling notes that the cruelty from other characters becomes clearer, and that the audience had never seen a performance like it, one with evidence never seen before. When the disability is real, and not faked, the tyranny becomes framed as revenge, and though the acts are cruel, they are realized as the results of the unfair treatment. The reclaiming of roles like Richard III, as well as analysis and deconstruction, can allow new life and quality to be breathed into the part. But one should not rely on Shakespeare solely. Though his works contain perspective, they are not examples of universal truths. One should balance their education, and become mindful of both the classical and the modern, as well as the privileged and the marginalized. I also want to say something unrelated to the video topic. This is my first time asking for comments in the video, but I do this because I would like to respond to them in my next video. This is my 9th video, and my next one will be about the channel, and I'd love to discuss with you some of the potential paths this channel can go. What do you want to see? What have you liked the most? And any other comments or questions about the channel, or any topic, I suppose. Thank you for watching.